Being the newest game in a long-running series like Tales of, me and many others had high expectations for Tales of Arise when it was first shown. It looked like a huge step forward for the series as they moved it over to Unreal Engine and increased the overall production quality of the game. As details about the game came out, it was confirmed that the game wasn't going to include co-op, which was a main feature in pretty much every other Tales game. The reason for this was because they really wanted to evolve the combat system, and having co-op was limiting what they could do. Obviously, this detail only made me and other people more excited about the game, and on September 9th, 2021, I bought the game day one and played it to basically 100% completion. Whether or not the game is good doesn't matter. What really matters is how good is the combat system. That's what you're going to be doing for a majority of the time in every Tales of game, and it's the main aspect I pay attention to in any action game. So does Tales of Arise have good combat? To figure this out, I'm going to break it down into 4 sections: mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics, and fun factor. Mechanics are the core components of the game. What happens when you press X, what happens when you move the left stick, and so on and so forth. Dynamics describe what happens when the player interacts with the game's mechanics. It's dynamic because every player will interact with the game's mechanics differently, creating different dynamics. Aesthetics are the look and feel of the game. Obviously, this includes things like the graphics and sounds, but more importantly, how does the game feel? Is it satisfying when I hit something? Do I feel quick and responsive when I move? Often this aspect can get overlooked when talking about combat systems, but I think it's just as important as everything else. And lastly, fun factor is pretty self-explanatory. Just an easy way to compile everything into a conclusion and end off with a rating. Starting with mechanics, the game controls like a modern action game with a few variations. For starters, your melee attacks are mapped to R1, and you have 3 arts mapped to the different face buttons with circle left for jump. These arts are different when in the air, and eventually you unlock a second art slot that you can use by holding L2 for a total of 6 ground arts and 6 air arts. When hitting enemies, they go into a break state. This allows them to be hit stunned by you and your party for as long as you can keep the combo going. And if you hit them long enough to fill a blue bar, you can activate a boost strike. This instantly kills the enemy with a flashy animation and deals damage to surrounding enemies. Along with boost strikes, there's boost attacks, and these are activated by using the D-pad for the corresponding party member, and each one is more effective to a specific enemy type or attack, and they also refill your AG gauge, which is used for arts. If you press R2, you can dodge, and if you do it with precise timing, you can do a perfect dodge and follow up with a counter edge. You can also do a counter edge after defeating an enemy, which lets you teleport across the screen to your next target. When taking damage, you have a chance of going into overlimit as a sort of comeback mechanic. You gain super armor, infinite AG to use arts, and access to your mystic arts, which are flashy AoE super moves. Your AI party members attack on their own, but you can switch to a different party member quickly mid-battle by holding L1 and using the D-pad. Managing your stats and equipment will also determine how successful you'll be during combat, just like any other RPG. But that covers mechanics, and now we can go over to dynamics. The combat system in Tales of Arise is a perfect example of the saying that there's 2 sides to every coin. On one side, there's a really fast-paced and nuanced combat system that allows for and encourages freedom of expression. But on the other side is a frustrating and unbalanced mess with design choices that make no sense considering how many games are in this series to learn from. To start, we'll look at the positives. Like most great action games, Tales of Arise does a good job having fun and simple action game mechanics like arts, air combos, dodging, and layering those on top of more nuanced mechanics like animation canceling with boost attacks and keeping enemies juggled in long combos, along with having risk/reward mechanics like the counter edge after doing a perfect dodge. The counter edge also keeps the flow of combat fast-paced because you can use it after defeating an enemy to teleport strike and start comboing someone else. Combos in this game feel really satisfying to pull off because you can mix in air and ground combos with arts that will send you up or down, along with using boost attacks to extend combos by hitting the enemy and replenishing some AG. These boost attacks can be used regardless of whatever your character is doing, which feels satisfying, but each one also has a specific use which adds an element of strategy. Xion's boost attack knocks down flying enemies. Rinwell's can interrupt enemy spells. If you see an enemy that you know can cast spells, it might be better to use someone else's boost attack first and save Rinwell's just in case. At the same time, since you have 6 party members by the end of the game, along with upgrades that reduce the recovery speed, you never feel penalized for using these attacks whenever you want just to extend combos or to do damage. The combat system also has a lot of variety with its 6 unique playable characters, along with having room for freedom of expression. With only so many art slots and over 20 arts for each character, you're going to constantly be swapping out arts to try new ones, and to see which ones fit whatever playstyle you like best. I really want to emphasize that these characters are completely unique from each other, and is a huge strength of this combat system and the Tales series in general. You could play through the whole game as Alphen for 50 hours, then replay the whole game again with Xion and have a completely different combat experience. The characters are different in their fundamentals, like how their arts or basic melee attacks work, but they also have a unique perk which even further emphasizes their different playstyles. Alphen can sacrifice HP for strong special moves that use his flaming sword. Law can enter the powered up state for hitting enemies while not getting hit. Kisara blocks instead of dodges. You get the idea. With that though, it's time to move on to the other half of the coin with the negatives. The biggest and most glaring issue of this game is its bosses and overall boss design. In a game that shines when you're stringing together long combos on enemies, why would you then make every boss unable to be staggered? I could understand certain giant monster enemy types, but even humanoid bosses can't be staggered at all. This changes the game from a fast-paced action game to a slow-paced battle of attrition. Instead of doing all those cool combos you've been practicing on enemies for hours, now you're constantly dodging and spamming your quick arts until the boss is open for a longer combo. Even when you can hit them with the long combo, it's not as satisfying as doing the same thing on regular enemies since there's no stagger. And most of the time this makes aerial combos and arts useless, unless the boss has a bigger hitbox. This type of design could work if the game did a better job of having its mechanics support this kind of gameplay when you're fighting the bosses. But what it really feels like is 2 different games clashing against each other. A prime example of this is the fact that bosses have way too much health. Even if you're the kind of player who grinds and does every side quest before moving on, you will always feel underleveled when fighting bosses, even on moderate. I'm sure a majority of the damage sponge claims I heard around when the game came out were referring to the bosses, and I'm inclined to agree. High HP bosses with 0 stagger does make you feel like you're hitting a damage sponge. Normal enemies can have pretty high HP as well, but the game is balanced around getting high combos and using boost strikes to instantly kill them, which is a mechanic that's basically null and void when you get into boss battles. The bosses themselves are also fairly poorly designed when looking at their attacks and gimmicks. More than one boss will summon lesser enemies to help them, which along with the high HP thing that the game has going on, can lead to very frustrating fights. Some bosses can spam their mystic arts whenever they want, other bosses have a mystic art that's completely unavoidable, and all the humanoid fights have a clarity issue, because it's hard to read the attacks of a boss the same size as you when there's 4 people hitting them with different arts that have a bunch of effects. Bosses are supposed to be the highlight of the gameplay, and they are in a spectacle sense and when it comes to the impact in the story, but actually playing them is way less fun than the normal encounters, and it's only made worse by the 2 other issues I have with the combat system, which is Overlimit and the party AI. The way Overlimit is handled in this game genuinely baffles me. Overlimit is a feature that's in almost every Tales game in some form or another, and everyone basically unanimously agrees that the best implementation of the system is when you can activate it on your own after filling a bar. Not only can you not activate it on your own in Arise, but it just happens randomly on its own when you take damage, with no way to even know when it's about to happen. Not only is this just not fun and dumb, but it also reinforces the idea that this game is 2 different combat systems clashing against each other. In normal encounters, this is still bad, but not really a big deal. Since you're fighting groups of enemies, you're more likely to catch a stray hit and activate Overlimit in an organic way the way it's intended. But then when you fight bosses, you'll be actively punished for playing well and not getting hit by never having access to your Mystic Art. Meanwhile, you have to watch your AI party members constantly do their own Mystic Arts because they get hit by everything, which brings me to my last point. The party AI isn't just bad, they straight up make the game harder for you because of how much they get hit. You will constantly be drained of your resources because your party members genuinely get hit by 80% of all attacks. In bosses, it doesn't really matter how well you play. What really matters is how many times will your party members die, and will you have enough healing items and life bottles to make it through the fight. Even your ranged fighters will get hit and die by very easy to dodge telegraphed moves all the time, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it besides lower the difficulty or grind levels so that they can take more hits. In older games, you could slightly remedy this issue by altering the way the AI acts in the strategy menu, but that feature has basically been removed for a more stripped back version. The AI, combined with the way bosses are designed, creates this double whammy of unfun and frustration when fighting a boss in the game, and is mainly what I was referring to as the other side of the coin that is Tales of Arise. Now we can quickly go over aesthetic and fun factor to wrap it up. The aesthetics of Tales of Arise do a lot for the combat system. The effects and animations are the best the series has to offer by a long shot. Arts make you feel cool and powerful, and with a lot of variety, it's hard for the game to feel stale. Sounds are impactful, and the OST is great with plenty of battle themes and a great main battle theme that never gets old.
Go, go, go! Ah!
More importantly, the game feels super responsive. Your base movement speed feels snappy, and you can turn and stop on a dime whenever you want without any unnecessary animations making you feel slow or sluggish. All animations can also have their end lag cancelled with either a dodge or another art, which makes you feel even more in control of your character and allows you to dodge whenever you want as long as you're not stuck in a long animation. Aesthetically, I think this game is fantastic, and I can't think of a better looking game that's going for a 2D anime art style with 3D models, and it's probably going to stay that way until the next game in the series comes out. Lastly, with fun factor, even though I said a lot of negatives about the combat system, when playing the game overall it's still very fun. There's not that many games that try to create a unique and fun engaging combat system, and for the most part, I would say Tales of Arise succeeds. Even though I do think the boss battles are a huge misstep of this game along with the AI, bosses are a minority of the experience, and during regular fights the AI isn't really an issue. I see a lot of potential with the combat system, and if they make a Tales of Arise 2 and fix all the problems, I could see it easily being known for having one of the best combat systems in the series. As it stands now, I would give the combat in Tales of Arise a 3.5 out of 5. It's definitely not bad enough to go down to 3, but I do think its problems stop it from hitting that 4 threshold. So with that, let me know what you think of the video, and thanks for watching.